we are our own healer. Like the inner healer is within you and I, within all of us. And we just have to invoke that again to bring that person out.
What up, fam? Welcome to another episode of Life Beyond the Game. Hope you're enjoying all these incredible conversations, all the incredible guests, all the beautiful, expansive journeys. There's nothing I enjoy more than really dropping in and holding space and drawing out these stories of these incredible humans. And this week's guest is no different. He is a former Marine, veteran, and former first responder. His name is Justin LaPree. And I met him, I don't know, about 6 months ago, maybe a year ago. No, it was about 6 months ago. And we've really connected in a beautiful way. He's a soul brother and a visionary. He's doing really, really big things. And his story is crazy. It almost brought me to tears multiple times. And I know it's going to have an impact on y'all today listening to this show. He, like many veterans, was lost coming back from war and the experiences that he had. And he speaks about some of those during the show. And man, what a journey he was on. He came back home, was struggling so bad that he was homeless for 6 months. Had an opportunity to get into finance. One of his mentors gave him an opportunity, got him off the streets. And in that process, he got himself together, but still felt unsatisfied, unfulfilled. Ended up coming back to Austin to become a firefighter. And in that process, he connected with the community of first responders and saw how much they struggled, and in his own life saw how much he was struggling to really process the trauma that he had experienced in his life. And he got to a point where, and this is crazy, got to a point where he was sitting in his car with a gun in his mouth, and he ended up pulling the trigger. And you're going to have to listen to the show to hear what happened, because it's a miracle. And I'm really, really grateful that this man is still alive with us today, and the things that he's doing are truly life-changing and powerful. He is the founder of Heroic Path to Light that helps first responders, their families, and military veterans to give them healing modalities with plant medicine and other things to really help them heal, connect, and let go of some of these traumatic experiences that they've been through. I am a massive supporter of Heroic Path to Light, and they're doing incredible things. There's going to be some links in the show notes if you feel called to support. It's a 501c3 nonprofit Entheogenic Church, and they are always looking for donations to help save lives, save these veterans' lives, and they're doing really, really good work. So make sure you check them out, and I really hope you enjoy this episode. My good buddy and visionary, Justin LaPree. And if somebody comes to mind while you're watching this show or listening to the podcast, take a second to go on your phone and copy the link and share it with them. I often, as I listen to podcasts, someone comes to mind, like, oh, this person would love this podcast. I go ahead and send it to them right then and there. And don't forget to follow, subscribe, and all of that wherever you're watching, listening, so you don't miss an episode. And if you haven't already and you want to support the show, help it grow, help me, help support my family, get this podcast out into the world so that it can start supporting me as much as I hope it's supporting you. Best way to do that is to leave a review, share it with your friends, and say some nice things about it. Really appreciate everybody that is on. Like within this community, it's really growing, and really excited to see the feedback and how it's impacting people's lives. And really grateful for every single one of you. And I really hope you enjoy this episode, because I really did. It was extremely powerful. Before we jump in, though, I want to share kind of an update of, man, I've been moving through a lot. Holy shit. Isn't life crazy? Man, if you've been listening to this podcast for a while, I've been talking a lot about the Heart Collective. It's been a big part of my journey, building community. I started over 3 years ago. I've pivoted a few different times, really trying to figure out how to make it work. And this last iteration was really clicking. It was really there. But unfortunately, I was unable to execute on the big vision. And as any entrepreneur knows, there's a ton of lessons to alchemize within this journey. And although I was unable to execute, I'm still running the river rafting expedition as a standalone retreat experience in August 22nd to 27th. I don't know when this is going to air. Probably, I'm not sure how many spots will be left. But if you want to check that out, there'll be a link in the show notes. There's some incredible humans going out there. It's 5 days on the river, deeply immersed in this beautiful canyon. It's so epic. It's way better than like even the Grand Canyon. It's just untouched, pristine, unplugged, no distractions, nature. We're out there for 4 days, 3 nights. The food's incredible. The rafting expedition company I partner with is second to none. And the humans that are coming out there are just top notch. And I have a couple facilitators. The thing that's unique is a lot of people ask, like, I can go on a river expedition anywhere. This isn't just a river expedition. We're running a retreat experience on the river. So if you're looking if you're someone who is desired to be a part of a retreat or experience some of that deeper healing, this is just so powerful, because we're bringing that programming into the river, out in nature. There's just nothing like it out there. And this is my 4th time doing this trip, and every single person that's come out here has changed their lives. And it's interesting because there's not a lot of people that are familiar with river rafting and like the expedition side of it. And so when they look at it, they're like, oh, I'd rather spend my time doing, if I'm going to go on a retreat, I want to go to Costa Rica or to the beach somewhere, or go to Bali. Or if I'm going to go on vacation, I'm going to go do X, Y, Z. So not a lot of people are familiar with the power of the river. And it's not only like the most fun, expansive, exciting experience. You get to go on these class 3 and 4 level rapids, which is exciting. But just the opportunity to like literally disconnect from the busyness and all the distractions that our modern world brings to us, and just reconnect with yourself, reconnect with other incredible humans, and go through a process of deeper understanding of self. Being able to bring those lessons and that growth into your life is truly transformative. And I'm excited to share it with all the humans that have already signed up. And maybe if it's something that calls to you, check it out. There's a link in the show notes. And without further ado, I hope you enjoy this episode with my good buddy, Justin LaPree. How you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Got that mic set up so you can does that feel good?
Yeah, sure.
Good. My man.
I'm just going with it.
Yeah, me too. It's like, have I done this before? I'm a fucking mess, dude. Luckily, I come in here and try to get it done as quick as possible because I rent the studio, and it's a little bit frantic sometimes, but that's why we take the breaths. That's why we drop in. That's why we connect with the present moment. No matter what's going on in life, we can always use the breath to anchor us back in and slow down and regulate the nervous system and come into a beautiful conversation, man.
And as is life, right? It doesn't always present itself just like what we thought in our minds, right? So every day brings different types of challenges. Microphone's not working, camera's not working, whatever it may be, right? And then we navigate through that.
Yeah. Say life never shows up in the way we expect it to.
That's right.
God damn it. I'm moving through a lot. Right now. So we'll definitely talk about that. But I want to give you an opportunity to really introduce yourself, and we can dive into a little bit of your journey and what you're working on. I really love what you're working on and what you're launching, and we're going to get into all that. But who is Justin LaPree? Maybe take us back a little bit. Give us a little a little understanding of your story and how you ended up where you're at.
Where I'm at. So I grew up in Texas, outside of Houston, in Katy. Grew up in the Catholic Church. Went to private school my whole life. Until my senior year, my parents were separating, and I moved into a public school for my senior year, which was a big transition.
Your final year,
my final year
of elementary, kind of your K through 12 school, you went from private, like really structured, I'm sure,
very structured,
into just all of a sudden it probably felt like, whoa.
It was, and my high school was an all boys school. Went to a Jesuit high school in Houston, straight Jesuit. Played sports for them. Very demanding school. And yeah, went to a public school, which was, it was unfortunate not to graduate with the guys that I had spent the last 3 years.
Yeah, what was the transition for? Why was that?
It was parents going through a life change.
Oh,
right, and money's a factor. Right. So
they couldn't afford
they couldn't afford it.
Yeah. Wow. Was this a divorce?
It was a divorce.
And it was just happened
in the beginning stages of the divorce.
Wow.
Right? So
how did you feel? Like, I mean, I know that's a long time ago, but what an imprint that must have been. I mean, just the initial feeling for me is not being able to, like, going through this entire life pretty much. I mean, yeah, that's the truth of it. Life with all your friends and going through school, and then all of a sudden your last year, you have to just get kind of ripped out from that and plucked into something else.
Plucked in. The thing that helped me through that process was the fact that I knew most of the kids at that school. I lived right down the street from that public school, Maid Creek. And so everybody in the neighborhood went there.
Okay.
So it's not like I was necessarily transplanting to a foreign place. I knew most of the people in that school system. So, but it was still a major transition.
Do you remember any like emotions that were present, or any like was there just anger towards?
Yeah, there was anger. Yeah, I would say there was anger and kind of rebellion mindset.
How did that rebellion mindset show up in your life? Was there any specific experiences where you like tried to?
Well, my relationship with my father was very, very unstable. He drank a lot through my life, was physically and verbally, emotionally abusive. And so that, I got to a point to where I didn't allow that to happen anymore. So it was there's a lot of conflict inside the house. And for the first time, it was me stepping up for myself.
And when this happened, when this move happened, or was it before that?
It was right before.
Yeah.
It was during my high school years, probably around sophomore year. And enough was enough. Right?
What did that look like? Was it just, physically, like just your stature, your energy, like because that must have been a lot of courage to get to a point where it's like, I'm going to stand up to my father.
Yeah, I really I really saw who he was, right? And he wasn't much, right? I don't consider him my dad, right? He was a father figure, and really did a poor job at showing me what a father should be, what a dad should be. And I'm grateful for those experiences because it taught me how to show up for my children and how to be authentic. And you don't always have to get points across by violence. And so I learned a lot at a very young age. But
how did your energy dynamic shift with your dad when you did stand up for yourself? Because that's the probably, right during your life when you're stepping into being more of a man, like kind of a differentiation process where I need to stand up for myself. How did that shift the energy, and how did your father treat you differently at all once he started feeling that from you?
I think he understood that I wasn't joking, right? I would physically harm him if he laid a hand on anybody else in the house again.
Because you're a big dude.
I was a big dude.
You're starting to be like,
I was a big dude. I mean, I was about my size in high school. and I didn't care, right? And so I got to a point to where enough was enough, and it did shift. Now,
what shifted?
Just the way that he addressed me, the way, there was more standoffness, and the abuse stopped. I'm not saying that the emotional and verbal abuse stopped,
because the trauma didn't heal that was causing the
correct.
abuse, but it was
correct.
just kind of reeled in, maybe a
The
little bit.
dynamic absolutely shifted.
Wow.
And
what story did that create within yourself when you like? Because obviously there's a lot of courage to stand up, not really knowing what is going to happen, but not bluffing, being able to like show up and stand up for if it needs to get physical or anything, to protect yourself and to kind of show that
That's
you're
right.
not joking. As a kid, it takes a lot of courage, and then things shift. And what is that kind of? How does that imprint into who you become as a man?
It I spent a lot of time with other families, right? I didn't have a close family life. Looking back, I wasn't present for my sister, who's 4 years younger than me. So she had to go through a big brunt of this, as I was escaping through hanging out with other people, other families, going on vacations with other families, doing things that I wanted and I felt I needed and I deserved to have. And so, this goes really to my initial wants and desires for community at a very young age. That's why I played sports. That's why I was in the Boy Scouts. I did all of these things away from my family because my family we didn't do family things. And so I found that in other ways that were very healthy for me, to stay away from the home setting. But I had to do it on my own. I had to figure it out. So I grew up very quick, mentally. And I saw exactly what should not happen in that dynamic. And it's really, really given me it's truly the best gift that he ever gave me, is how not to be.
Do you have a relationship with your father now?
Very little.
Very little.
He's an escape artist. He's met my kids a few times, multiple marriages, multiple divorces, moved to Alabama because he wants to be around water. And he always expects, his kids to come to him. He has a great relationship with his stepkids.
He got remarried
a couple
times, I think you said, yeah.
But, I don't know. And, there's a lot of unpacking there. And, I don't think he's ever going to give it a shot to unpack it. I think there's a lot of avoidance. I think he's ashamed about how he raised us.
I'm sure.
And not being present. And his answer for that is not to address it. And so,
it seems like it's a very generational thing too, because different dynamic, similar energy of not my father not being present. He wasn't abusive, but he was more kind of timid, like the opposite spectrum of like not standing up for himself. My mom was a little bit more of the emotionally like kind of manipulative. It was all kind of about her and the household, like what she said went. And so with my dad, he still wasn't present. And I've been on this healing journey of really like, as we go on a healing journey, naturally our parents and the dynamic is such a massive part of it. And as I'm healing, it's learning to forgive and let go and understand those dynamics. And there's a lot of energy, a lot of grief, a lot of pain, a lot of, why did this happen or whatever it is. And I think naturally there's this like wanting, our fathers to change or to just have a realization and reconnect with that love. And it's really hard, but there's a process still unfolding like within me. And I find it really challenging when my father's not able to meet me there. And I'm in this process now where I haven't really talked to him in like 6 months. We had a big kind of blow up, and I have had to distance myself. And like I was trying so hard when I first got on this healing path of like, I want to reconnect with my parents and like show them like, because I love them so much. I want them to heal and expand and let go and forgive, but I can't do that work for them. And it's really challenging. So I've distanced myself from them. And it's really interesting because although I haven't talked to my father, I saw a picture of him recently and he's lost like 30 or 40 pounds.
Wow.
And so I think back to this interaction we had where I blew up at him. We had like a disconnection kind of fight, if you will. And now that he's lost that weight, it shows me that he's let go of something from that experience. I haven't connected with him and I'm still giving it space and time, but he had to have let go of something emotionally, some kind of type of story psychologically to all of a sudden be shedding that weight because he's, pretty overweight and unhealthy. And so I'm really curious to see what it is. I don't even know if he had the language or we'll be able to drop into it, but it's a process that's beginning to unfold, which is really fascinating. And I kind of say all that because I wanted to bring in kind of your healing journey with your father and how much that process, I mean, there's so much to unpack, but kind of how has that internal journey been for you of reconciling that, letting go of it, and then letting go of this need or desire or attachment to him having to change or shift?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, I think the most beautiful point that he and I got to is where I forgave him in person, and not sure if he truly understood just how bad it was, and it's
From your perspective as the kid, kind of experiencing that.
Yeah, I don't know if he truly understands or remembers. You got to think, if events happened in a drunken stupor, right, that could absolutely affect your memory. And he's just not in good health, and so, but I had the opportunity to forgive him, regardless of if he understood that or not. I needed to do it, because when I joined the Marine Corps in 2001, I was to escape, right? I needed to get away. I needed to learn life lessons that were not taught to me in the household on my own.
Was that the intention for going into the Marine Corps?
Yeah, that was really the intention.
How old were you when you joined?
I was almost 19.
19. And so this is this like the option? And what was going through your awareness of choosing this? Is it more like I need to learn how the world works, get out there?
Yeah, I came from a service background, being in the Scouts. I just loved the brotherhood aspect of it, community, being with like-minded people. I was a very proud American, so I wanted to serve. I had, not a ton of family, but had some family. My grandfather, who I was close with, my father's dad, served in the Navy in Korea, and was very proud of me going in. I wasn't really talking to my parents at this time. They were going through their divorce, which was a great thing. I supported it. Like, they needed it.
Yeah.
I don't believe, and this is my belief, that individuals should stay in toxicity for the children, because then what are you teaching them?
Yeah. And the energy, like understanding energy now, like that's even worse because the children are so tapped into energy, they can feel it. And so if you're trying to like act like nothing's wrong, but everybody in the family is like, something's fucking wrong, that's the hard piece.
And I mean, I went through that. I went through a divorce when my children were very young, and why I pulled off that Band-Aid is because of how I grew up. And I knew that there was, you get to a point of no return, where the foundation is cracked, and there's toxicity, and there's always arguments. And at some point, you have to do what's best for you and the entire unit, regardless if everybody is on board with that or understands that. You can have those discussions later. But it was forgiving him in person, being able to say those words was incredibly transformative for me.
Well, what was that process like? What did you say to him? what did you say? I need to talk to you. I have something to say. Like, how did that process unfold?
And that's really what it was. He came and visited in Austin, and
Pretty recently?
no, this is back in 2017, 2018, somewhere around there. And this wasn't a bash fest, right? I didn't need to rehash or remind, but he was very aware of my dislike for him, and it allowed me to still have love in my heart for the person that he is, and just make him aware that I'm going to do a better job at reaching out to you to stay connected. It's really for my children, right? That's really who I feel bad for. And I wanted to kind of mend that hurt, in hopes that my children could have a relationship with him. And so, I said, listen, you and I have not always seen eye to eye, and I don't agree with everything that you've done as a parent and as a husband, but just know that I forgive you. And I do have love in my heart for you. And it was powerful.
How did he receive those words?
He received it. I think so. I do believe that he does remember, regardless of if he admits that or not. He is a narcissist, so does not take accountability for very much in his life.
And it's hard. What I've found, like as people get older and our parents get older, it's hard to reconcile an entire life of unconscious, wounded, traumatic, like living, like outlash, and having so much regret, shame, judgment of self, to really go on this healing path. Like, I know we'll get into kind of our healing journeys and how this kind of starts unfolding and circling back, is as soon as you start waking up and taking responsibility for your life and radical responsibility, like every decision I've made is why I'm at where I'm at and gotten here, it's hard to expect people, especially like older generation, because to all of a sudden take responsibility, it's not just, okay, I'm going to take responsibility from this point forward. It's reconciling an entire life of where I didn't take responsibility. And there's a lot of judgment and shame that comes with that. And it's hard to look at.
For sure.
And
I respect that. And, I'm very, I can't change my father. And I don't know if he'll ever be aware to change, but, it is a better dynamic. I just see him differently. He's frail. He's older. He's softer. It's kind of like a kid in a way, where I'm the parent. And it's a totally different dynamic. I do reach out, in hopes that we can engage more, for my children to know him more. But trust the process.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, so joining the Marine Corps was this opportunity to, I'm sure, seek out, even if it was unconsciously, some more male role models, and
That's right.
and some getting out into the world and just developing discipline, and obviously having this heart for serving your country. So talk about joining the military and kind of how that process unfolded. What did you learn about yourself, and how long did you serve? And kind of give us a rundown on that.
So I joined pre 9/11. I joined in March of 2001. Got out of infantry school September 7th of 2001.
Wow.
And then my unit wasn't even back yet. They were doing a Mediterranean float. So they were still on a Navy vessel on their way back to the States. And we were doing working parties. Like we were, cleaning up the base, our camp, getting ready for the unit to get back. And watch the towers fall September 11th while we're eating breakfast. I mean, it was such a shift. I really don't have words for it. I had never been to New York before.
What was that like? Take us, like, just drop into that experience of watching the TV and like, because I mean, I don't know, I was in junior high. I think I was in 7th grade, and I was on the West Coast. Never had been left the West Coast, so New York to me felt like a different country, like way far away. And obviously, didn't have the understanding of what this actually meant, and like the collective, like, worldwide, like, experience. But somebody that literally just got like out of boot camp and ready to go. What was that experience like?
Well, when the plane hit the first tower, didn't really register. Plane hit.
It's an accident.
Hit a building. I mean, I'm really unfortunate. When the plane hit the second tower, that was a different dynamic. And we were glued to that TV, all of us. And really, really powerful moment to be 19 years old. Not even. I was about to be 19. And to understand what is going to happen next, to actually sit in that moment and understand that we're going to war. We didn't know what that looked like yet. But it's a lot. And
was there like, what was the energy you were feeling? Was there like this vengeance, this retaliation?
I was angry.
Yeah.
I was angry that somebody attacked us on our own soil. Like, it was a very, very, I've never felt that before. I've never felt anger like that. And, just coming out of boot camp and infantry school and, training constantly to be an efficient marksman. I mean, it was go time. And there was a lot of, we were motivated at a high level. And it was really the first time that I had seen in my lifetime the country be united. Right? Like, really, 9/11, was really, and to this day, is the last time that I remember feeling that the country was united. Didn't matter color, race, creed. Everybody knew that we needed to stand together. And it was a beautiful thing out of such a tragic event, to see the country come hand in hand, to have an answer for that. Now, I deployed in 2003. We were training for cold weather if we went to Afghanistan. We did desert training for Iraq. We ended up going to Iraq. If that was, don't think that's the country that we should have invaded for those reasons, for 9/11. But there were some different decisions being made on a high level that pushed us into Iraq in 2003.
Was this something you had an awareness of back then? And
no.
Kind of your comrades, like, were you guys having conversations like, what the fuck are we doing?
No.
Yeah.
No, we were just trusting.
Yeah, like, we need to keep, probably this itching to get over there so you could actually be of service and get some payback.
That's right.
Yeah.
I was like, man, they must know something we don't. Right? So, regardless, we're there to serve the country. So if this is where we need to go, this is where we're going. And so invaded the country in 2003. A lot of us were exposed to sarin gas, which
what is that?
It's a chemical agent, so has brought in asthma in a lot of us. We were always wondering if there was weapons of mass destruction and so forth that Saddam had, and a lot of us were exposed to stuff.
Wow.
Consciously or unconsciously. And so being in that invasion, going into the Battle of Nasiriyah, and it was an eye-opening experience, right? Taking another life is that's a real thing. That's a real experience to go through at 19 years old, right?
And that you took another life at that time, or
yeah. So everybody was. I mean, we ran into pockets of hostility that we had to overcome, and then a lot of them surrendered. So there was a lot of lives that were spared if they surrendered.
But you were in that spot of
There were
I'm gonna take your
lives
life
were
if
taken.
you don't. Yeah,
Absolutely.
wow.
And so, but it was it wasn't that bad, right? We were still fighting the Iraqi army at that time, and we lost some lives, but it wasn't massive losses.
Yeah, what do you mean by it's not that bad? It's just compared to what could have been?
Well, compared to my next tour, right? And so that's the only reason that I say that.
Because you have a
comparison. Because I went back in 2004 for the Battle of Fallujah, which is one of the bloodiest battles of our time. One of the most famous events in military history.
I haven't heard of this one. Give us a overview of the
Iraq.
battle.
So this all started after, I believe it was 4 Blackwater contractors were ripped from their trucks, declothed, burned, and then hung upside down naked on a bridge in this city. And well, that's not going to fly, right? And so the Army had some units there already, and we were coming to Fallujah. The Marines were coming, and we relieved them, the Army unit that was there, and we bunkered just outside the city, and we started prepping for invading the city. And this really turned into like nobody was. I mean, I wasn't expecting what was about to happen. It was total. We had this one experience back in 2003 that presented itself a certain way, and this was as far opposite that as you can imagine. So this is before all these crazy up-armored Humvees, and we just had metal panels that would be attached. And I remember hearing the first IED go off, right? Like 400-pound bomb buried in the ground. I remember that going off for the first time. What the fuck? And I mean, anytime you would hear an explosion of that magnitude, because we knew if we were dropping bombs, we knew if we were in different firefights,
it would come over the radio.
What everything's happening.
Mm-hmm.
And if something out of the ordinary happens like that, well, one of our brothers is no longer with us, right? And it was a very different dynamic there. We were fighting outside insurgents that were coming in, and they were creating a stronghold in the city. And firefights were daily, right? We were always meeting resistance, and they blended in. They weren't in uniform like we saw in 2003. These people are wearing normal clothes.
They look like civilians.
Wow. Right? So who are we fighting?
How did you respond? Was there fear? Was there your training kicked in? Was your nervous system activated all the time?
That's a great question.
How did you respond?
Yes, and yes. To all of those. Your nervous system is activated constantly, which I really believe just with the adrenaline jumps and the hormones, dumping constantly is why a lot of us have hormone issues when we get out. right? I was on, I had to get on testosterone shots in my early 20s.
Yeah, like adrenal fatigue, like you're
Crazy.
not be able to regulate all the normal
It
stuff.
was a real thing.
Wow.
Right. And yes, scary shit. Anybody that says that war and combat is not scary hasn't come to that awareness, right? It's scary as shit.
So how'd you navigate that?
Just, we train at such a high level that you can navigate that subconsciously without thinking, right? It really becomes muscle memory. You know how to react, you know how to move, you know how to communicate, and you're not thinking about being scared. Now, when the bullets stop flying,
go back to the camp and process.
You're like, yeah, dude, it's a lot to unpack.
What do some of the guys do, or you coming back from an actual firefight or a bomb going off or some kind of, planned attack and then coming back to the base to recoup, regather? I mean, was there any tools that people used? Did anybody talk about it? Was there any even breathing or shaking it off or trying to, ground back in?
We didn't have any of those tools.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't talked about. Dark humor is a real thing, right? I saw that in the fire service as well. Making jokes about it, taking pictures, taking war trophies.
It's almost like the only way to process is just crack a joke to break the tension.
We would get hooch from the locals, so we would drink and play cards and try to escape. We would have a satellite phone. We can make a call home. Of course, you're not talking about any of that stuff, but no, there weren't any tools actually, and outside of speaking to a chaplain every now and then, if that's who you wanted to speak to, nobody talked about it.
Because you're confronting your death every day.
You're confronting death every day.
And so if you
we had a death letter
written already to send home.
Hmm?
Wow. What was the process like writing that?
Well, I didn't expect to come home. My plan was to die over there. I did not imagine coming home. So I didn't really have a idea. I was so far removed from my family. I didn't really have community outside of the military.
And you had really nobody to go back home to.
Yeah. So I was like, I'm going to serve my country the best way I can. And if I die, then it's going to be honorable. And that's it.
Do you think it's almost like confronting the death and then being okay with it is almost necessary to be able to go back into that? And do you have any, I'm sure now that you've talked to guys in the work you do, but was there any talk around that with the guys that are going in, or maybe some of the older guys that have gone through it, like seeking mentorship, or is it just like you're kind of on your own, you're kind of going through your own internal psychological, okay, I'm okay with dying and I'm going to go in there and just do it? Like, how did that affect you?
Yeah, well, it allowed me to calm down.
It's like an acceptance.
It was accepted it.
Wow.
Right. I was like, if this is what happens, I'm okay with that. And so that allowed me to handle fear better. Just to focus on saving my brother to my left and to my right. If I can focus on that with trust that they're watching me, then let's all try to make it home. I did not expect to make it home. And so it was really internal. We did not talk about this stuff. No one knew what integration was. The older guys hadn't been to war, so we were all doing this together for the first time. And so you grow up really, really quick, and taking another life is nothing that I'm proud of. It is not a notch on the belt. When you're in it, you're in it, and that person's trying to kill you. But looking back at it, we killed direct reflections of ourselves, and that's like really the aha. It's like, fuck,
That's
It's like,
powerful.
I mean, it truly is, right? And I had such moral injury when I came back, given the fact that I grew up in the church. And then you're a part of this death and carnage. And it's like, am I going to hell? I mean, if that's your belief system, right? Am I going to hell? I mean, is there a spot for me up there? And I really turned away from God for quite a few years because of this experience. And I was
Is there anything that you did turn to? I mean, let's talk about coming back from that experience. You survived. I'm sure there's a part of you that's living on borrowed time. So there's probably a liberation in a way in that, but then a lot of unconscious trauma, obviously, that there's, with the work you do now, there's not a lot of tools out there. So how did you and your kind of teammates coming back from that experience process? Like, what was the initial thing?
Pills, alcohol, violence. I came home with a traumatic brain injury, PTSD, depression, anxiety, suicidal ideations. I had incredible survivor's guilt. And we self-medicated.
What'd you use?
Oxys, Xanax.
You got these off the street or from prescribed?
From the VA.
From the VA.
So I got out right away. I got out just a couple months after I got back. And went
from the military completely.
From the military completely.
Was it just because your time was up?
My time was up, and I'd seen enough. I don't think I had it to. I don't think I had it to go back. I had seen enough, and that was all I needed to see. And can humbly say that it truly affected me.
So what was that first initial unfolding? You obviously escaping, numbing out, just doing whatever you can do to cope with all of this energy and nowhere to really turn, nowhere to process. The VA is just handing out pills to encourage, hey, we can't really support you. We'll give you this to kind of help you numb out and forget about it. What was that initial process like, and how long was that initial journey? Like, what was that stage of integration, and how did you navigate it?
Very, very poorly. I didn't know I was suffering, which can be dangerous.
That's the hardest part about all of this, right? It's like you don't know what you don't know, and you've never been through the experience, and there's nobody talking about it. So
not then. This is 2005, right? No, nobody was talking. There was no self-helps, and
nobody's talking about mental health even back then.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And I mentioned this to you earlier. More and more servicemen and women are returning home that would have died in previous wars due to the advancements in medical care on the field of battle. And, we wouldn't have survived. I mean, you get shot in World War II, there's an opportunity for you to die there. Right. And
the odds are you're probably going to die.
Yeah, the odds are you're dying. Now, shit, man, there's a great chance that you're coming home. And so, the system has not ever been built to support the influx of servicemen and women returning home. And so that is the big problem with the VA system. I was just talking to my director of development, and, he's going through a life change with his wife, and he requested a counselor, a couples counselor, a year ago, and they just got back to him a year ago. And he's had to, pay out of pocket monthly to try and save his marriage. And it took him a year.
Why is this? Is it just
the backlogs, man?
Yeah.
People are underpaid.
Not enough resources going into it.
Yeah. There's a humongous backlog of people.
All the money's going into the current.
And I mean, and not to get on a political soapbox, but we're sending billions of dollars out of this country. I mean, can we redirect some of that money and focus on helping our men and women heal? Right?
I know it's not the same there's a lot of differences, but there's a lot of similarities just in what I'm paint a picture in my mind is like with the NFL and just my related story as far as the journey through that, and then the transition piece specifically. And the NFL is a $25 billion a year industry, and they're putting like a few $1,000,000, which is like, you just look at it in isolation like, oh, it's a lot of resources, but it's like laughable how much money they're actually putting into supporting the transition process. And part of it is not just the funds that go to it, but it's part of this greater systemic issue of not knowing how to support a transition with the loss of community, loss of purpose, loss of identity. That is something that we, both share. And then it seems to me like, all the money's going into the actual current war and the people that are active military. And then as soon as you get done, it's like, not only is there not enough resources going, but there's not enough of the right resources, because we don't know actually how to integrate these very intense psychological processes, and really just holding space for all the emotion and the grief. And I feel like those are the tools that we really need. But because grief and emotions we're so disconnected as a society and culture to those things, we don't know how to support. So we prescribe medication or, even counseling, and can't get it for a year, which is crazy. Yeah, it's just really like the resources, and it's not only just the resources, but it's also the type of resources.
You're right. I got out when I was 23. Now, most of your belief systems and development, right? I mean, you're still programming your brain in your early 20s, right? And now that's why, right, it's so powerful to take a 18, 19-year-old kid and program him to be a killer, right? That's why, because these younger men and women, they don't have belief systems yet. They're still forming, right? And so the government will train you in that sweet spot. That's why that's why there's a cutoff, right? Because you get too old, you have all these belief systems and patterns and programs, and
you won't be able to buy into like the structure. And it takes the structure for it to run the way it does so efficiently.
I mean, that's really fascinating. And so, when you get out at 23, if you do 4 years, what do you do now? I mean, you hit the nail on the head, Joe. Just like what you suffered from leaving the NFL, we suffered too, and we don't have a pot to piss in, right? And it's the struggle's real, and that's really what I've talked about when the war really began for me. I didn't have community anymore. I didn't have a family. I was, I couldn't talk to them before war. Definitely can't talk to them now. They're not going to understand any of this. And so I just went into isolation and was in very toxic relationships. And I think a lot of that had to do with how I was raised and thinking what's normal, and self-medicating, alcohol, pills, women, just never being present, never wanting to remember. I had incredible flashbacks back then. I couldn't be around fireworks, couldn't drive for months because I was always looking at trash cans and things in fear that they would explode. And they would get me activated, go into panic attacks constantly, break into emotional outbursts. I used to fight all the time. Right? I was angry. And it's, I'm not embarrassed, right, to talk about this. It was part of my process, and it's really unfortunate because I hear this story so many times and I see it unfold, and we're not supported, and we're not taught how to reintegrate into society when we come home, and it's really a failure of our system to have somebody join the military without a draft, volunteer, to put your life on the line for a complete stranger, and to come home and just, here's your piece of paper, thank you for your service, and that's it. And it's it's truly, truly unfortunate that there's not more support for us when we get home. And so in the early 2000s, you know, I was using substances, you know, that were from my doctor and then some on the street, just to stay numb, and ended up moving up to New York. And I was in a relationship with a female up there. She went to Fordham University, so I moved into the Bronx, and that didn't last long. It was a toxic environment, and so I left without a home. And I was like, oh, you know, I can survive for a little bit. And I was so proud not to go back to Texas because everybody told me not to go in the first place. I ended up homeless. Could not find employment. Didn't know how to write a resume. Didn't have any sort of community up there. So I lived on the street for about 6 months. And then I found my way into a halfway house for veterans.
What was the experience of being homeless like?
Horrible.
What, you were in Texas?
No, I was in New York.
You were in New York. I mean, you're on this, like, take me through like a day in the life of like that 6 month period.
Begging for anything.
It's like panhandling on the side.
I had zero money. It was incredibly depressing.
Sleeping underneath a bridge.
That's right.
Like, did you have a sleeping bag with you? A tent?
Yeah, I had a sleeping bag.
And you just kind of be on the street asking for money, food, anything.
That's right. Anything.
And I'm very curious. Was there, obviously there's confronting starvation and being hungry a lot, or did you, like, what was the support like in those moments? Because 6 months is a long time, and I'm always curious, you know, is there ever like a loss of like, I might not find my next meal, and then it comes? Like, how did you navigate that process, and where did you find food? And
you can really eat for, you know, you get creative. You get creative when you're starving. And I could have got myself out of that. All I had to do is get to a phone and call people back home and get out of that situation.
So it's kind of a shame of where you're at, not wanting to ask for help.
I never did it.
Wow.
I never did it. And I'm grateful for that. I was too proud, Joe. I was embarrassed. There was a lot of shame in the decisions that I were making. You know, what I had been through and where I'm at. I had to figure out a way out, because I've always had to figure it out on my own, because, you know, my father wasn't there. So, you know, in a lot of ways I was trusting the process, and I was embracing the suck, is what we would say. Now, one of my best friends, his uncle ran a halfway house. They got me into this halfway house. I had a bed. They had a computer. I started learning how to write resumes.
Was there, because you said not calling for help or asking for help, was there a resistance to going and even receiving this opportunity to be at a halfway house? Was there like a stepping through that? I
welcomed that.
You're at this point, you're like, fuck, I don't have an option.
I welcomed that.
Yeah.
I was very, very grateful. Around this time, Wounded Warrior Project had gotten in touch with me. I was starting to do things with other veterans, right? This is in the beginning stages of that organization. They were taking me to events, taking me to hockey games, and I was starting to hang out with other veterans again. So it was great.
So the community piece started coming online.
Came back.
Feeling so isolated and alone.
That's right. Got into my mother did give me an interview with some guys out in Long Island to broker mortgages. All this is right before the subprime collapse, where we were selling mortgages to pretty much anybody, and started making some money. So I was able to get my own apartment, really, really shitty basement apartment, 0 windows, but it was better than
super grateful for it. Though,
super
right?
grateful.
Wow.
Yeah, it's like, dude, I don't need much, right? But yeah, one of my closest friends to this day, we served together. He got out. He moved back to Long Island. We started to connect again. Subprime, boom. Collapse happens. Lose employment. But I had enough reserve to get by for a while. And so I met this gentleman. I was dating a girl at a Irish pub in Massapequa, Long Island. And I was sitting next to this gentleman from England, from Tottenham. His name is Bob Cheeseman, dear friend and mentor to this day. And I remember watching baseball. It was the playoffs. He didn't know much about the sport, and I didn't know much about his football, right? Soccer. And so we just started to engage and talk about, our stories and where we came from and what we're doing. And he was very, very impressed of my story. And he's like, I would like for you to come interview to work for me. And he worked for Citigroup, which is a big financial firm. And he ran the international settlements desk. So people would manually input directions on these stock equity trades for them to settle and for the money to exchange. And so I didn't have much of resources. Wounded Warrior Project had set me up to go to Joseph A. Bank, got me a couple suits, and I went on this interview, and I got it. I got the job. I remember, my starting salary was $60,000. I'm like, fuck, yes.
Damn, that must have felt like a friggin'
I'm like, holy shit.
bankroll.
Dude, I'm like, I can breathe a little bit, right? And I was so grateful for the opportunity to be seen, really. I didn't have a lot of on paper skill sets, right? I didn't go to college. But there was a lot of leadership traits that I did express through my actions, through my words, with how I held myself, that were being seen by Bob. And he wanted that ethos on his team. And I'm forever grateful for that, because that completely shifted my trajectory. And so I worked for him for 4 years. Then I got recruited to go work for Brownstone Investment Group, which was a mid-sized broker-dealer in Midtown. Became a high-yield salesman for them. Worked there for 4 years, and then
what was your? It seems like I just feel the energy of this shift from homeless to successful, kind of in the finance game. Did your salary start taking jumps up pretty considerably?
It did.
And how did you process that influx of money and success?
I remember making, so how did, say that again?
How did that, going from homeless to the infusion of kind of working up the ladder, starting with $60,000, but then all of a sudden you're like rising up, you're learning, you're growing, you're expanding, and you're making more money, and you're finding success in this thing. How did you handle that?
It was intoxicating, to say the least. I really, really enjoyed the space that the growth in the bank account gave me, right? I wasn't struggling anymore. Now, I wasn't struggling financially, right? I was still struggling, but just not financially. And that allowed me to afford more ways to self-medicate and cope.
Speak about that a little bit. How did that transition? Because that's what I'm referring to with the success of all of a sudden having money, but not the psychological kind of developmental healing process involved in that. Did it come out more destructive? Were you able to kind of handle that success suit, kind of doing business plus this kind of shadowy side?
I did handle it extremely well. I was very successful, but we went out all the time. That's just what you do in your 20s in New York City and around other young professionals. You do all you can drink brunches on Sundays, and
this is part of the normal culture. This isn't like I'm going to the shoot up heroin, but I'm medicating with the society in the normal way. Yeah.
That's it. And so I wasn't using. I was on pills from the VA. I was off oxys. I was off benzos. So I wasn't abusing pills. I was just on psych meds and Adderall and Ambien, right? Took the Ambien just so I could sleep from the Adderall. It was a whole mix, right? It was a
cocktail that's pretty normalized.
I know. And so, and then just drinking. I was very unhealthy, just internally. So that allowed me, it was great, man. We had season tickets to, the New York Rangers. We had tickets to the Yankees. We had tickets to the Mets. We got to entertain. It was a good experience in your 20s to have, making some real money. And I was doing something that I never ever pictured myself doing. Um, and it ran its course. In 2013, I'd been married for about 6 months, and I felt empty. And so I wanted to move back to Texas, wanted to move back to Austin. And one of my best friends was a fireman for the city of Austin. He'd been trying to get me down here for years, and had enough resources to where I could take this leap of faith. It took a little bit longer than I expected. There was a hiring freeze, and the Department of Justice was involved, and
With becoming a firefighter specifically?
With becoming a firefighter.
Yeah.
So it took me a few years to get on.
So a few years from when you kind of had the idea.
Mm-hmm.
So what was going through, you felt empty and weren't finding satisfaction with the occupation that you were in. So was it this thought of, I want to try something new. This isn't really working for me. Was it hard to kind of let go of that to go be a firefighter, especially if you're like starting to make money, finding success, having the kind of community? Didn't feel like the right one?
That's correct. It felt very shallow. It was really, I was starting to see behind the curtain, kind of eat your own mentality of Wall Street. And I wanted to get back to service. And I knew that it would be a massive pay cut, but there's also, a great pension, great benefits, more security. I was around when Lehman Brothers collapsed, and, you would see, thousands and thousands and thousands of people, walking out of the office with their box and all their belongings, and
that could be taken away at any moment.
Right.
So logically your mind's like making sense of choosing this different path, and there's obviously something deeper in your heart that's calling you towards service and fulfillment, right?
That's correct. And really building a legacy. I just got married. We had plans to have children, and what that looked like. New York City was not the city that we were going to raise children in. We didn't have any family up there. So I wanted to move back closer to where I had some really good friends, and build a new community. And that was, I wasn't attached to the money I was making. It felt good, but I was really still struggling extremely inside, and the money wasn't helping that. And so came back, still worked in front finance for a couple of years while I got my certification to be a firefighter, and then got employed by the city of Austin, and then became a firefighter for the city of Austin in 2017. And then worked at Station 14, right by the old Mueller Airport, on Airport Boulevard, which is a special operations unit. And then I moved downtown to Station 1, which is off of 5th and Trinity, multi-company station, was on Engine 1 for about 4 years. So 3 years, I guess. And so that's where I spent most of my career.
So how was that experience, becoming a firefighter, first responder? Did it fulfill sometimes? I'm just assuming there's a comfortability to kind of the military and like the community and being around the guys, and then similar to that, does that fulfill that kind of side of things?
Absolutely. That's why you see so many military veterans going into these fields, becoming a police officer, becoming a paramedic, an EMT, a firefighter. It's very similar to what we're used to, how we were programmed. It was great. I felt immediate gratification and immediate community. And I was very, very proud of myself, because I was really close to the age cutoff. I was 35 when I joined. So going through, difficult training and And, being part of that smaller team, unit again, was very fulfilling for me. I thought that I was wired for it. I thought that I was prepped for it, that I was, programmed, I was desensitized. Um, and I remember doing CPR on my first patient, and didn't bring him back.
Wow.
And it was. I remember calling one of my team leaders from the academy, Sochi, and I go, I'm having some trouble with this. I didn't think I would, but I'm having some trouble with it. And she helped me work through that process. She was actually, in a lot of ways, helping me integrate from that process. I didn't have this verbiage back then, but that's exactly what it was. And
that's beautiful that you reached out for help.
I did because I knew where I came from, and I didn't think that this would affect me, and I was very aware that this was affecting me.
How was it affecting you? Was there just symptoms?
I was just, it wasn't a good feeling, right? I was like, man, I tried to do everything I can in that moment, thinking that I can save a life, and not all lives can be saved. And it was an innocent person, right? And you have, there's family members that are crying and screaming, and the whole dynamic, the energy in this container, it's very overwhelming. Extremely overwhelming. If you can imagine being called out to work magic on somebody's worst day, right? And try to intervene in saving somebody's life. It's great when it goes well and it works. But it doesn't always. And so that is a very real feeling to experience. And so
what were some of those feelings that you confronted?
Complete grief. Like, I grieved for the families, right? Grieved for the people in that room, with the realization that their loved one was not coming back. Anger, right? Not being able to be successful at your job, right? Taking that on your shoulders, regardless if we could have done anything different or not. We're highly trained to intervene. Did everything we could.
Are you playing back the experience in your mind of maybe there's this thing I could have done differently? Or
no, there's not. Yeah, I've done that. I can't do that to myself. But we are very well trained in the small unit, just like a fire team in the military, right? We know exactly what we need to do as a team. We know what we need to do individually, and together we can get the mission done. And so when it doesn't work out, we just push that stuff down. We don't talk about it. I was part of, I don't know how long you've been here in Austin.
4 years.
So there was a bomber, the Austin City bomber. He was delivering explosive devices in the form of FedEx packages, and mailable deliverables to people's doorsteps, and they were exploding upon opening. Horrific. I remember going on those calls. I was working with Station 14 at the time, and horrible. It felt so much like where I had just come from a few years ago. It felt very much like we're back at war. That was, I was still really struggling with everything.
Because those stories haven't been integrated yet.
They haven't been integrated.
So they're all just
and
living
now
right there under the surface.
I was compounding these experiences on top of each other with innocent people dying. Working car wrecks on I-35 they were just horrible experiences. And, having children, not being able to resuscitate children, and dealing with that container with parents grieving the loss of a child, it's a lot to absorb. And I've learned that I'm an empath, which you can imagine how hard that is to go through these experiences, not knowing what to do with that. And so there was no one talked about it. The culture is very much like the military's. We don't show emotion. We don't talk about it. We don't talk about our feelings. What are feelings? And we have dark humor. We have dark humor about it. That's how we get through it. We drink because alcohol is legal, right? Everything else is scheduled. And, that's really our only coping mechanism, because if you bring it to anyone's awareness that you're not doing okay, they're going to take you off the truck. They're going to take you out of the squad car. So it is a society, it is a culture where it's not okay to not be okay. And, looking at that and going downtown and working the Black Lives Matter riots and the people, getting murdered on 6th Street, mass shootings, I started to spiral extremely fast, because I didn't have an outlet. I had I had a toxic marriage at home. My wife, an alcoholic, 2 young kids. It was a very toxic household. Again, something I was very familiar with. Going through the hardships of the marriage breaking down, to every time I put the uniform on, somebody's dying. Right? It got overwhelming. And so, my wife and I, at the time, we started our divorce in September of 2018. All these events started to continue to compound on each other. I was definitely spiraling, not knowing how I was going to get out of it. And then on Veterans Day of November 2018 is when I attempted to kill myself. And I was on duty at the fire station. Just got back from a bad call, and I had a death letter sitting next to me, and it was cold. It was cold out. But
what did you write on the death letter?
It was to my children, and it was dated for 2032, when my daughter would be 18. And it just let them know how much they meant to me, and to not think of me leaving as having anything to do with them. And I apologized, and I told them that I just can't live anymore. But I loved them, and that I would see them again soon. And that letter has never been opened. I carry a SIG P227 45 caliber. I've carried it since I've gotten out. It's always been loaded. It's always been cleaned. And I had no awareness that weapon was anything but that. So I sat in that truck with my truck on, and just really sitting in silence. And, tears were rolling down my face about leaving my children. My marriage was over. I was, when you go through a divorce, everybody seems to scatter. Nobody wants to be around, I guess. That was my awareness. So I didn't really have anybody to talk to. You didn't want to talk to people at the fire station because it's not a happy subject. And you just try to stay focused and keep your mind off of really what's happening in your life, which is, I know now, not the proper way to deal with that. But I stuck my gun in my mouth, and I just kind of sat it there for a while. And I was surprisingly calm. It tasted like relief. That's what it tasted like. And I pulled the trigger, and the hammer dropped, and it was silent. And I was still there. And I puked. I had so much energy inside of me from that experience that I vomited on my lap. And I completely dropped the magazine. I pulled the slide back, and every single cartridge had been removed from that weapon. It wasn't me. And so somebody in my community at the fires, I still don't know who this person is. Somebody had unloaded my entire weapon in fear that I would do this at some point.
So there's obviously some type of signs that people were recognizing.
Sometime
around
between
you.
September of 2018 and November 11th of 2018, somebody unloaded my weapon. And I didn't think to check it because it's always loaded. So here I am, right? Somebody loved me more than I loved myself. And that shook me to the core. I took time off from work. I went into hiding. Right. I didn't see my kids. A gentleman who I served with sent me a book, How to Change Your Mind by Michael Pollan. And I read it in a week. And I mean, I was desperate. But I was so shook up from me finding the courage to do it. I was still integrating from that experience. Like it was very overwhelming for me, just mentally, to go through that and still be there, because I wasn't expecting to come out of that.
Well, you decided to kill yourself, and you pulled the trigger,
and it didn't work.
Fuck,
and it really, really affected me. And I'm super, super grateful for all of this. And so I read this book, How to Change Your Mind, and it gave me a glimpse of hope. This is really the first time that I've heard anybody talk about psychedelics being used to treat mental health, ever in my life, which is a problem. Yes, and we'll touch on that a little bit later, about education and resources and so forth. And at this time, I was off all medications. I didn't like how I was feeling anymore. I was in this gray space. I was just floating through life, waiting to die, right? And so I was introduced to a gentleman. His name was Jacob, a dear friend of mine. He lost his battle to mental health and suicide this past January. Really affected me. He gave me my first ounce of mushrooms while I was growing my own. I was cultivating my own. I learned how to grow via Reddit and YouTube.
Just from this book, because you wanted to try them. You didn't know where to get them. So you're like,
I didn't have anything to lose, right? If it works, this is how I spoke to myself. If this works, Justin, you get to see your daughter walk down the aisle. If it doesn't work, you're going to make sure that you load the weapon in front of yourself, and then you're successful, right? Those are my two options. There was no gray area here.
It's all in on this thing.
It was all in. And so I remember my first experience with mushrooms, 3.5 grams. I had a camera in the corner of my room. I did it by myself. I didn't have community. I didn't even feel safe to talk about mushrooms in the station. 3.5 grams, and completely changed my life. That one single usage of mushrooms. I followed the Johns Hopkins protocol outside of having somebody actually hold space for you. That wasn't an option yet. Had a sleep mask, had noise canceling headphones, listened to their psilocybin playlist for 7 hours. And I went into the depths of my subconscious. And
take us through that. So you're sitting there, you got this whole setup because you want to document it. Because
right.
Why not? If this can help save other people, then let's do it. This is my last go at it. Take us through the experience of kind of having the mushrooms, not really knowing what to expect, but there's a lot of hope in this experience. Drink the medicine. What's the first, 15, 20 minutes of just sitting there waiting for them to come on? What's that like? And then take us through that actual experience and what transpired.
So I was not religious at this time. I was pretty close to being an atheist, right? I was a non-believer, as you could say. But yet I did pray. I prayed. It wasn't to God. I just prayed out loud, right? And I just said, I looked at this as a medicine, and if this medicine could help me heal, if this could help me address and help teach me whatever it needs to teach me, then I'm open to that. And I've worked with mushrooms 120 times, worked with other plant medicines, and I've always gone in with the same mindset over and over: is trust, let go, and be open. Right? I wasn't scared because I know where I just came from, so can't be worse than that. And I knew I couldn't die. I knew I wasn't going to overdose. So I started to work with these medicines, and that first one, that 15, 20 minutes, I was anxious. I was very anxious, right? Started to question, well, am I supposed to feel anything? I had no reference point. And I was by myself, which can be very scary in a way. We spoke about this earlier, the fear of the unknown. There's our subconscious has kept us alive our entire life. And that's why we have certain habits and beliefs, and that's why we act certain ways, because our subconscious it doesn't want to change. And I remember going through this experience, and I just remember feeling a sense of oneness with everything. And it was the first time that I felt love for myself ever. And I cried for hours. And I hadn't cried, Joe, man. This is 2018. Man, easy to say 2 decades. Right.
So all that suppressed emotion, especially from all the experiences you had, let alone having a normal, quote unquote, life. You obviously had a very traumatic life with a lot of traumatic experiences. Right. Never felt any of the emotion because you just didn't know how. All of that just I can't even imagine just the energy and release that's taken place in this moment.
It was really, really beautiful. And I sat with that for a very long time, and it was so transformative that I started to work with these medicines twice a month, and I would continue to, stair step my dosing up a half a gram. And then I would go back and I'd watch the video footage, and then I would journal and I'd write and talk about my experiences. I was really creating I was really integrating without knowing what that word was. I was integrating.
Take us back to the first experience when the medicine kind of, it slows down, you come back into 3D reality, and I'm sure you're just feeling this deep cathartic release, which I'm sure there's a lot of power in just feeling like emptied out, like the wringed out of all those emotions. What shifted from before saying this is my last hope to immediately after that coming back? Like I can feel it in my heart, just like this. I don't even know, what was that experience like?
It was a beautiful experience. I felt love for myself, and I felt love for everybody, to include my father, to include my children, to include my soon-to-be ex-wife. Right, grateful for all of these experiences that I had, but really just being able to feel, right? Because I used to say I love you to my partner. I didn't actually know what that meant because I couldn't feel it in myself. And having really the awareness to understand and to feel what love is, and to not see my hardships as faults or embarrassing moments, but to have gratitude for those moments. As I learned something from all of those about myself, about my resiliency, about my passion, about my love for others, to just sit in silence with yourself and to have these conversations with yourself it was a life-changing experience, to say the least.
And was there an inspiration of, holy cow, like, thank you, Michael Pollan.
Yeah, it worked, right?
It worked. And so then what was the driving force
it was hope. It gave me, I knew I had a lot of work to do, and I'm still, that's 5 years ago. I'm still doing work.
Just getting started.
Still getting started, right? But I'm light years from where I was. And this is the game of life. And so, but I had hope, like instant hope, that this is the first thing I've ever tried that is working. Like just the shift that I had, to now I did, you start to know that there is a God, right? Now it's not a belief system anymore. Now you start, as you work with these medicines, I really think that's one of the best gifts that these medicines have showed me is you go from believing to knowing. It's super powerful. And I applauded Michael Pollan and individuals that have been dedicating their life to the advancements of psychedelic therapies, for the work they've been doing in a very, very estranged landscape. And that led me to reading the next book that was transformational for me, which was The Immortality Key by Brian Marescu. And given my history with the church, completely expanded my consciousness just from that. I read it, then I listened to the audiobook, and really changed my entire perception of organized religion and just how long these medicines have been used and who they were being used by.
That kind of breaking down of entire paradigms is a powerful thing, because it becomes no longer like my individual belief system or what I grew up in or what my experience is life, and you realize there's some greater narrative that's being pushed. And I'm so grateful for that guy. I actually saw him at Summit at Sea. He did a talk. Amazing. And he was talking about the whole journey of finding the psychedelic compound ergot, which is the same thing that synthesized LSD, and going on this 12-year journey of this theory that they used to use this on pilgrimage in the early Christian church, and what that meant to the actual church structure that's in power today. They would deny that. Even academia would deny it. And so he was up against this whole battle until finally he went on this journey and found a chalice, because he found the chalice that he was looking for and wanted to test it, because there's new technologies where you can test the organic material to see what's in it. But the place he went to in Greece, they unfortunately washed all of the artifacts clean. And so he's like, he went on this 12-year journey, finally found the chalice, and then there's this huge disappointment of like, wow, it's right there and I can't test it. And he kept going, and he ended up finding this other chalice that was, I forget where it was at, and they ended up testing it, and they found compound of ergot, which proves that the entire theory is correct. And they use these psychedelic compounds, usually mix them with wine, with other different compounds, 2,000, 3,000 years ago, and they would have these mystical experiences. That alone is such a massive paradigm shift that we're not even beginning to scratch the surfaces of, because there's so many people holding on to this old narrative, and it requires a ton of psychological process and groundedness to even start questioning that stuff. Psychedelics helps with that, because it helps you break down that default mode network and kind of expand your consciousness into other realms. But that individual expansion, and then coupled with this proof that there's an entire paradigm narrative that we've been pushed at and not even true.
And thank you for saying that. 100%. Growing up, with the belief system that we're born of sin and that we need to be baptized, and this is how you need to do this and do that. And for the first time, when I started using these medicines, I felt a deeper connection to God than I've ever felt in my life. I never felt connected to God before. And that's why it was so easy for me to remove myself from God, is because I never had a connection. Right? You show up, you pray, you speak to a mortal, you ask for forgiveness, and you have this wafer and drink this wine, and you're saved. Well, I never felt that, and so for the first time in my life, in 2018, I felt a deep connection with God, with spirit. And it wasn't until my first Bufo experience, which is 5-MeO-DMT, that I understood that we're all God. And that was a massive, massive moment in my life, to come back and be able to speak those words and hear myself speak those words, that God is all of us, that nature is God. That completely blew everything. That was exactly what I needed to put the cherry on top of what these medicines are, why they're coming back into our life. And I truly believe it's to save humanity, and to expand our consciousness. And I mean, it shifted. It shifted everything, and exactly why I punched out of the fire service after 4.5 years, and what led me on the path that I'm on now. So,
what was that process like? So take us back to the first experience, and then you kind of go all in self-study of giving yourself more and more ceremonies, probably not even calling them ceremonies, just experiences with mushrooms and recording and tracking.
Mm-hmm.
The intuitive nature of wanting to track all this, what was behind that purpose?
If I can prove it on myself, then I can save my friends. And I started to really become vocal about it. And I was test subject 0. And I was really wanting to create a database of evidence that was going to prove to the naysayer that these medicines actually do work. And I recovered my traumatic brain injury, my anxiety, my depression, my suicide. I didn't want to die anymore. That outside of love, that was the first thing that I felt when I came out of that first experience in December of 2018, is I don't want to kill myself. And just that alone was all the hope I needed to watch the sunrise come up another day, right? Be grateful for the breath for another day. And through working with these medicines, I not only was more in tune with myself, not only did I have a connection with God now, I was starting to build a spiritual practice. My relationship with my children, night and day. I was present. I wasn't just coming home from the station burnt out, right? I was showing up to work with motivation, with that fire inside of me again that I knew always existed, but I suppressed for a long time. I felt good.
So the evidence was there, and you said you started becoming more vocal, obviously wanting to share this with everyone far and wide, because what a epiphany of, wow, this thing,
right?
All these people talk about like all these things, and there's nobody really even talking about it. I know a lot of my friends are struggling. People are committing suicide. I'm telling you, this thing works. It's at the very least, it makes me want to live, which is so powerful. Why is nobody talking about this? What was that process like of sharing it far and wide? How was it received, and where did that process unfold?
So it's still unfolding. So I've lost 15 friends. As of Jacob in January, I've lost 15 friends to suicide since 2005. Extraordinary number. We all are aware now, somewhere in between 22 and 44 veterans are killing themselves a day. And that number is rising in the first responder fields as well. I just knew that if I could save one person's life with my story, with my knowledge, then the whole thing's worth it, right? So a child doesn't have to grow up without a father or a mother. That marriage is saved, and you don't just keep passing on trauma from generation to generation. And so I started to talk about it, and it's received well by some, and not received well by others because of the legalities of these medicines in this country, which reinforces the need to talk about them and to educate the public about these medicines and what they're doing, and to truly understand why they're even scheduled in the first place and who scheduled them and what were the intentions of scheduling them. I mean, we're talking about plants and fungi that have been used forever.
Even in the early Christian church.
Forever. Even in the early Christian church. And, you know, with Nixon and his Controlled Substance Act in 1970, he hated two types of people that were in, and he didn't like hippies and he didn't like blacks. And those two cultures were using medicines in a very mind-opening way in the early 70s, the late 60s, early 70s. And so he made them all illegal. And then the ones that are legal, you know, because Schedule 1, right? Highly addictive, harmful for your health, right? No medical benefit. What does that sound like? Alcohol, right?
Big time. Definitely no medicinal use for that.
Highly addictive, right? And bad for you. And in this Schedule 1, we're speaking about, you know, mushrooms, cannabis, right? LSD. And they're in the same group as heroin and cocaine and crystal methamphetamine. And what's really, really ironic is you can take the poppy, right? And you can process it down into a pill that they give people for pain. And it's legal and it's called medicine. But the original form is a drug in their eyes. And it you know, doing this work with these medicines and understanding that this is truly the only thing that I've tried my entire life that actually worked, I started to become very vocal about it. And I started to run underground ceremonies for people, my friends who wanted to die. I'm like, brother, I got you. Just trust me. Because they saw something different in me and they wanted it. And I wanted them to have it. This wasn't for me. I had to make sure it worked. Right. But this is for every single person out there that's struggling, that doesn't have the answers, doesn't have the resources, to find a glimpse of hope again. You know, this isn't a panacea, right? So you're not going to just take mushrooms or work with ayahuasca and all your problems go away. You're not going to forget about the past. You know, the work just begins. But it gives you that space and allows you to see these hardships, these traumas with a different perspective, with a different lens. You can reformat them in your brain, right? Let alone all the neuroplasticity that's happening and creating new habits. And, you know, I started to talk about it and it was very well received. You know, there are people that are, you know, in law enforcement that I speak to that are veteran buddies of mine that they're not there yet. And they're very respectful of my stance and I'm very respectful of their stance.
What is their stance? What's the resistance that you get met with?
They think they're programmed. They're programmed to believe that these are drugs. And they've been fighting the war on drugs.
Right? So like hits home, close to home.
It's home.
Like
right?
How can I do drugs if I'm taking this person to jail for having drugs?
Right.
Yeah.
And so, you know, that's really where I like to correct people because words do matter. These are not drugs. These are truly medicines, and they've been used as such forever. They've been used as connection to God, for spiritual awakenings, for healing properties, for community gatherings. I mean, this is truly why I believe these medicines are being reintroduced to our civilization. I don't think it's coincidence. I don't believe in that anymore. And I'm very, very, very hopeful because more and more active duty military, active duty first responders are applying through the organization that I've started. And the word is getting out there, and people are understanding, and people are being educated, and people are seeing the benefits, and there's documentaries, and there's Netflix specials, and there's conferences, and the renaissance is happening. And there is a big paradigm shift because everybody, regardless if you're wearing a badge or not, I know even the badge wearers understand that what this country, how we treat mental health is a failure. And they know it, but they're handcuffed, right? They're handcuffed right now until they're not. And that's starting to shift, right? There's a police officer for Winthrop Police Department who has an application into our church, and I'll speak more about the organization in a bit. Has an application in to become a member and has submitted to not only his department but of the city of Winthrop permission to join our Entheogenic Church to work with sacred plant medicines for his connection with God, for his healing. And that's with the city manager and their lawyers right now. And if it doesn't get approved, then he's going to sue. Because you in the First Amendment, right, the government cannot stop you from practicing your religion and your religious freedoms. And so if they say no, he's very well prepared and resourced to file that lawsuit.
And it looks bad on them too. If you're
does.
like this, not only the religious piece, but the mental health piece. And
That's
if
right.
this, like all of the research pointing to not just your own evidence of your experience, but there's tons of research out there right now
Tons.
that are saying this is the best thing for XYZ healing. And how bad a look that is to say, no, you can't go do that because we still attach to the idea that this is drugs.
A drug and not medicine. And really this would be, and I'm very optimistic. I can almost feel it that it's going to happen and he's going to be approved and he will be the first active duty city employee to be granted to come and join a plant medicine church. And that gives me a lot of hope because that's going to then spark the flame with everybody else around this country who is serving and who is suffering in silence. And it just takes people like that. It takes pioneers to not live in fear, to pave the path for everybody else to come and follow, right? And I honor this individual, and he's an incredible friend. Some of you may have seen him on How to Change Your Mind. His name is Sarko Jajarian. Incredible. He's a psychotherapist, went through the MAPS protocol, just an incredible human, and my life is better for it. And I'm really, really hopeful because when this happens, it is going to change how we treat mental health in the first responder fields. And that is something that we have as a culture, as a country, we have failed to do. Is take care of our men and women in service. And I'm really, really, I'm very, very proud, as you know, to do this work. It's an honor for me to know that, you know, we have our third retreat coming up, right? 20 people have gone through our program. 20 lives have been saved, right? They're different. You know, as you know, when you work with these medicines, you're different in every great way possible. And I have a lot of hope for this country and this world with us coming back to the understanding that love is the answer. It's going to take a long time, but I'm so proud to be able to be a part of this in my lifetime. I'm so proud that my children are going to be able to grow up in a better world, in a better country. It's really powerful.
I'm proud of you too, brother.
Thanks, man.
Really good work you're doing, and really proud of those pioneers and the courage it takes to step into that and to do it in the right way. Because that's, we were talking about the paradigm shift. Like a lot of those people that have resistance to it being a drug and not doing it, someone goes through the right channels in the right way, and that one person getting approved, it can shift an entire collective belief structure around, all you need is that little bit of question or that tipping point to be like, wait, what is real if this is no longer real? And that shift is the spark that can lead to a lot of other curiosities and questioning. It's like when cannabis was legalized like 10, 15 years ago in Colorado, a lot of like the older generation or people that don't use had this idea that it's, those are drugs, those are potheads, this cannabis. A lot of those people I'm seeing now, they recreationally will eat a gummy or smoke a joint because it's legal now. And they're like, oh, I feel so much better. It's so much better than going to the bar, having a drink, or I feel more relaxed, or it helps me with anxiety. And they're shifting because the government said, no, it's okay now. And so that is a big piece of, there's the individuals like us who, find our way here and we're just pioneers and courageous in doing it. But to actually facilitate greater collective change, we need the system to start approving. And I love the work that you're doing is because you're not doing this underground. You're really desiring to bring the conversation to the forefront and to the light and reach the people that have no idea, no awareness, and doing that in a very public way as opposed to kind of underground. Because you can go find mushroom ceremonies or ayahuasca or all these different plant medicines, but there's a lot of problems with that because you don't know if it's proper. It's definitely not regulated. Is this, big thing with psychedelics is it a safe container? Does this person know what they're doing? Not even in just the experience, but understanding the psychological makeup of what can be unearthed, how to do it properly, and then how to integrate the experience. There's a lot that goes into this experience, which I'm sure you've understood as you first started by yourself, and then realizing like, oh, there's more than just to the singular experience itself. So talk about Heroic Path to Light, when that vision came to you, how it's unfolded, and kind of the structure of it, the nonprofit Entheogenic Church, and desiring to be very public about our God-given right to connect with the divine and to heal with these natural medicines from the earth.
For sure. It was after I had a retreat ran for me that was not done properly. The preparation wasn't there. The integration wasn't there. The container wasn't safe. And I really had a really difficult experience. And I was working with a very difficult compound medicine. And I had incredible awareness coming home from that. I had this vision show itself to me that I was to start an organization to heal America in America using sacred plant medicines, but to make sure that nobody felt unsupported and nobody had an experience like I had, and to create the standard. And I had failed to see it. And, I was hearing about how expensive it was to leave this country, to go on these retreats. And these retreat centers didn't have well thought out preparation and integration programs. They were just in the retreat business. And I saw a massive, massive need. And, this is January of 2022, when I had this experience, and I'm super grateful for it. And I've talked a lot about this experience with a lot of people, and, people in the medicine space hear this a lot. The medicine's going to show you what you need to see, not what you want. And I needed to see just how bad it can be. And because I went in there with the expectations I was gonna go back to my roots, my childhood, my father issues. None of that. And you know what? I laugh about it because I'm super grateful, because out of this experience, I had this vision. I worked with mushrooms not that long after, and I had this vision come to me, and I sketched it out on a piece of paper. And heroic path kept coming to me. Heroic path, heroic path. And then moving from darkness to light. And I said, heroic path to light, right? Because we've been on a heroic path, and in there we've been through darkness. Now it's time for us to find the light again. But we need to be, someone needs to help walk with us, right? Like, take my hand and show me the tools I need to find the light again. And so I did. That's exactly how that manifested itself. I remember I was starting to collect people in my field. Marine sniper buddy of mine, Mark Wolf, who is now my senior steward. I helped he and his wife heal with mushrooms and 5-MeO, and he's forever different, and he's as loyal as they come. And I started to, I invited him over, and I invited some individuals that were in the integration space, and we just started to have meetups in my house and just talk about my vision and what that looked like, and how much money it would take, and how we could do it. And we whiteboarded the entire thing. And
you love that whiteboard.
I love it, man. We've worked on it.
Yeah.
And it's great because you put it down. It's down on a real thing. And we started to talk about my vision and how I saw this going, and my passion to, be the lead healing center in the country, if not the world. And I incorporated the church in March of 2022. And just for everybody listening out there, the becoming a church to where we can practice our religion, this is a non-dogmatic church. So this is a place for us to meet in community, commune with spirit, commune with God, and learn lessons and have these insights of the ancient wisdom of these medicines in a sacred way, with intention. So to do that in America, as these compounds are still scheduled, if that is part of your religion and these are used as sacraments, then you are protected under the Constitution. And so that's what we did, and created very in-depth bylaws and started to build out the organizational structure of the church, and what sacraments we were going to be using. It took me 9 months to create the very first retreat protocol. I knew without a doubt that I wanted to take my time with this, that I wanted to be different, that I wanted to prove to everybody who is underground that we need a standard, right? We need to prove to everybody that is not supporting this movement, what we're doing, why we're doing it, how we're doing it. Educate. And we ran our first retreat in right around Veterans Day of 2022 for 10 individuals. Most of them were active duty fire. I knew who was struggling within the Austin Fire Department, and I wanted to impact their lives in a very direct way, immediately, for those that were on the fence of living and dying. And it snowballed from there. I made some small tweaks. We started to, integrate as a group, as a staff, on how to fine tune the process, which was already felt close to perfect. But um, I'm very OCD, so I continue to fine tune, and I started to bring in different individuals. Brought in a trauma therapist from California who had left another retreat center from Mexico, and I started to build out a very comprehensive, which is now the most comprehensive program in the world. And it's a 25-week program that we put people through. 8 weeks, you meet with our therapist and that department. You're already cleared medically. We have where you can work with your own primary care physician and start titrating down on any medications that you're already on. They start microdosing mushrooms 2 months out to help as you titrate with any unwanting feelings that you're going through. Getting off of benzos and SSRIs is a extreme challenge for a lot of people, for most. And it does take some time and it has to be done slowly. And so, this is kind of I've really wanted to meld ancient wisdom and modern science, right? We can do this ceremonial in a sacred way, but we can do it safely. With the advancements that we have and the resources that we have, we can make sure that people are set up for success. And that's really where I came from this at is what did I want? Like, what would I want as a program to support me? What did that look like? And let's build that. And so built that eight week preparation program to where these individuals start going through one-on-one and group integration calls with the rest of their cohort. At the same time, the spouses and the family members are also going through a online community cohort with an integration specialist so that they can meet our team, our staff, hear from medical professionals, and learn more about these medicines, what they're being used for, and how they can show up and support their loved one, because they're on the journey as well. And then they come and work with us for a week in a retreat setting, where we teach different modalities of healing, breath work, meditation, journaling, body movement. We work with different embodiment practices, mindfulness tools, and really wanting to teach individuals what they can do from the comforts of their home and what they can do when they're driving down the street and somebody cuts them off. Right. And really just having that awareness and giving them a toolbox of tools to where, breath work's not working today to get me out of this spiral. Oh man, meditation work. Oh, that worked today. Right. And it's a practice for a reason. Right. It's not all this is going to work for everybody. And what works for me may not work for you. But this is a practice that we have to start to do daily to create new habits, to rid yourself of those habits that don't serve you anymore. And so during that retreat experience it's such a beautiful experience to be a part of. It's an honor of mine to meet people where they're at and to walk with them up this mountain that seems so daunting when they show up. And they show up and they're scared and they have fear of the unknown. A lot of these individuals have never worked with a psychedelic medicine before. And there's a dynamic there. But I will say this, everybody that comes to our doors, they trust. They trust. Like they're desperate. These individuals are on the verge of killing themselves. Nothing else has worked. They're on their second, third marriage. They're alcoholics, right? They self-medicate and cope, just like the bad practices that I once had. And when they leave, they're different. And I get emotional every time that I'm there, and being in that container with people, seeing the light come back into their eyes, knowing that I didn't just affect them, I affected their families, their friends. Like everybody that cares about that person will be forever affected in a positive way because of this work that's being done. And being able to have that ripple effect, the mycelium effect, right, of putting love and energy back out into the world to where these people can find their purpose again, they can find their identity again, they can find their will to live again. I mean, it's really beautiful to see people transform right in front of you. And then you check in with them weekly. You see smiles on their faces. They're spending more time with their children. They're spending more time with their wives. Their relationships better. They're coming back to volunteer. And I'm like, that is the medicine. The medicine is, in terms of entheogens and psychedelics, it's just a tool. Like we are our own healer. Like the inner healer is within you and I, within all of us. And we just have to invoke that again to bring that person out. For a long time, I always was looking for somebody to save me. I was looking for somebody to come fix me. And it took me a long time into my late 30s to realize that I was the one I was waiting on the whole time. And so, you know, I also had the awareness that people weren't feeling supported when they came home. I was seeing guys go to Peru and Mexico and Costa Rica coming home, and they would have, 2 integration calls, and that's it. And so I created a 16-week integration program. And that's what's covered in terms of a sponsorship. The entire 25 weeks is free of charge for military, veterans, first responders, and their families. But that 16 weeks is a compilation of one-on-one and group therapy calls with our integration specialist, helping them navigate the lessons that they learned through the retreat, help them go through their process. And then we have a 60-day resiliency reconditioning system called Warriors with Purpose. And that's really a 10 to 15 minute exercise each day that helps these individuals go through the cycle of growth from inception to deception through transformation into identity, right? Every single cycle of growth, we have to hit through all of that. We don't have the lottery system. We can't go from inception of an idea to identity and skip the valley. Right?
That's where the real work is.
That's where the real
descend into the depths of
deception.
All of it.
You do. You have to go through deception, and then you will come through. You can either quit, or you come through transformation and into identity. And that's what we're teaching through this 60-day online program, which is then complemented with a 12-week peer-to-peer accountability group, where these individuals are getting new partners every 3 weeks. They're checking in daily on voice, right? We ask people not to text because we never know how people are going to be truly feeling, but you can hear a lot through someone's voice.
The verbal cues.
And then once they graduate that entire 25-week program, then they join a mastery community, which is forever, which is our full-time integration, for the organization, to where we meet, we have different church events, we have online events. We are here to support all of us because healing happens in community. Right? We know that trauma thrives in isolation. And my mission is to heal America in America, is to heal this country in this country. These medicines are our birthright, right? And they were pushed away from our vision for a very long time. And starting as we continue to talk about this and have these conferences and have these podcasts and these documentaries, more and more people are waking up with an open mind, an open heart. And that is what we all need. I'm not saying that everybody is going to be suited to work with psychedelics, right? That's not what I'm saying. But everybody should have the right to try. Everybody in this country who has free will should have the right to try a compound that has been used since the beginning to help heal and to connect with God. They should have the right to have that experience. They should have the right to try that, whether it's for consciousness expansion, to have a deeper connection with God, or to actually heal from the traumas of our past. We should all be able to do that. And I'm very, very hopeful, because I've seen a major shift. And when I think about when I started my journey in 2018, and I couldn't talk to anybody about mushrooms. And I'm telling you, here we are in June of 2023, not even 5 years later. And I could walk down the street and find somebody to talk to about mushrooms. Right?
Yeah, it's crazy.
And now, the University of Texas, God bless them, the first public university in the country to have a psychedelic research center. They're right here. I mean, if Austin isn't the epicenter for psychedelic advancements and the advancements of mental health, I would challenge anybody on that, because I really do believe this is ground zero in a lot of ways.
Oh, brother.
Oh,
man. Such deep work, man. And I just love the care, the intention, the support, the program, the understanding that these psychedelics aren't going to save you or heal you, but the tools that you develop to go through that that descent into the darkness, instead of suppressing it or not knowing how to navigate it and numbing out with whatever pills or alcohol, but knowing that you have to go into it to heal it. And that's the importance of developing these tools, is all the tools: the breath, the cold plunge, the diet, the nutrition, the movement, the psychedelics, the integration, the therapist to call to support the community. These are all tools to help you navigate that descent so that you can come out transformed and then support others in it. Is really beautiful. And yeah, man, as you were talking, I'm just reflecting on your journey. Holy cow, the story you just shared, and I'm just sure that was just the highlights. So there's so much material there. And I'm reflecting back on where we started when you were 19, joining the military. And one of the things you said is, I just wanted to be of service to my country. And now, fast forward to the journey you're on now, and the vision you have to be of service to this country in full circle. It just makes me emotional, man. And I just would love to hear how it feels to find that deeper calling and that service within yourself, and how to really serve America in this way, as opposed to, going to war.
I appreciate you having that awareness. I'm freaking proud of myself. Yeah, this is the first time that I've been able to serve others and serve myself at the same time. I was always serving a country who proved to not love me. I always served a community at the cost of my own mental health. So this has been the first time that I've been able to serve others and serve this country, serve this community, serve our heroes, and serve myself at the same time, because this is what I need. I need community. I desire it. I have to have it, and I will seek it out. I've sought it out my whole life. I didn't have it in the household, so I always was a part of a team outside of the house. And this fills my cup up. This is the first time I've done a lot of great things. Been a part of a lot of great organizations. Had some very transformative experiences, but this is the first time to where it fills me up, to where I'm radiating love, to where I can help somebody. And I'm not a healer, right? I'm just guiding them through this process. They're their own healer. And being able to assist them in that process and have that ripple effect into their families and into their their friends, and into how they show up daily in the world for themselves. I mean, dude, what greater work. I mean, I used to think being a fireman was the best job in the world. No, this is what I'm doing now is the best thing I've ever been a part of in my life. I consider it my sole purpose. I believe with a distinct knowing that this is, I had to go through the suck, right? To be able to meet people where they're at, to be able to relate, to have the knowledge and the tools to share with others on how they can get out of the darkness and into the light again. And it truly is something that I am truly proud of myself for sticking it out, for individuals who have believed in me when I didn't believe in myself, and have stuck by me through this entire process. And it's been a real beautiful awareness, because I just feel so supported and so loved by my friends, my family, strangers, my community. It's really, really a beautiful life I have, and I'm very blessed to be able to share this with everybody. And I wake up every day watching that sunrise, energized and activated to impact people in ways that are completely supported and transformational for them to become their best self. So,
man, such deep work you're being called into, man, and I'm so grateful to be on this journey with you and call you an ally, a friend, a brother. And I'm just, there's somebody looking out for you, man. And I can just feel the calling and the work you're bringing into the world, the creation, the vision, the support, the ripples. And I just think back to that person that emptied that cartridge from those bullets, and what was speaking through him or her in that moment, saying, you got to save this guy's life because he's got big work ahead of him. And man, thank you, man. Thank you, Spirit. Thank you to all the things that happen in our life that might feel like the worst fucking thing possible. To go through that and to know, even if it's the deepest whisper within our hearts, within our souls, that this is happening for me. And where am I being called to let go so that I can follow the path into the unknown and see what unfolds before my very eyes, and how Spirit, God, creation, the universe shows up for us in those moments if we just take a breath, just learn to trust and to reach out for help. Thanks, brother. I really appreciate you, man. Holy cow, what a fucking journey.
Thank you, brother.
Just getting started, man. How do people get involved with Heroic Path to Life, Heroic Path to Light?
So you can find us on social media. We're on LinkedIn, we're on Instagram, Facebook, and then heroicpathtolight.org. You can find us online as well. Please reach out if you are struggling, if you have questions, if you want to learn. Please reach out to us directly. My personal email is Justin@heroicpathtolight. Please reach out to me. We are here to provide access in a sacred, legal, and safe container to these psychedelic medicines, to these entheogens. And we're here for you and your entire family. And if you are a supporter, you would like to learn more, if you would like to learn how you can help support these veterans, first responders, and their families on their journey, please reach out as well. We need your help. We can't do this alone. I have 147 heroes on the wait list in desperation for healing. So we need to continue having these conversations and exploring synergies on how we can support these individuals.
Mm. And the ask here is, he provides the Heroic Path to Light provides these resources at no cost to the individuals that really need them. And it really does save lives. And as a 501c3, there is a big part of that is raising money to fund these experiences so that these guys can get support in this way that is super transformational and profound. So if you're somebody that is a donor of any type, or you're looking for a nonprofit to support, even if it's a small amount of money, all of it is going towards really helping save lives in a very big way and moving the needle on this greater paradigm shift and mission of, making these resources more widely available in the conversation and the education. So if it's something you feel called to support, definitely check out their website. All that will be in the show notes. Thank you so much, man, for coming and sharing your story and for the work that you do.
Grateful for you, Joe. Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate you. And if you guys enjoyed this episode and as you were listening, somebody popped into your awareness that you may know that may be struggling or may just need some words of inspiration from Justin's story and the work that he's doing, share this episode with them. Something as simple as that can really spark hope within an individual that there's resources out there. So if anybody came into your awareness, even if it's a family or friend, and you want to share the episode, that's a really great way to support them, support the show. And if you're enjoying this podcast, an easy and simple way to support it is to follow, subscribe, leave a 5-star review, because those really help when people are looking for new podcasts. It's an investment of time, investment of energy. And they do look at those things, and that really helps me and this podcast grow and reach a wider audience and having these potent and powerful conversations. Love you, brother.
Love you too, brother.
Thank you. And thank you all for watching, listening, and supporting the show. Talk soon. Peace.